Thank you. This is where I'm supposed to make the bad joke about the slides working today. We're very excited to be here for you on a panel around how to partner with parents. You know, the quality of a young person's sport experience is largely built around the persons and contexts that surround them. Early in life especially, parents are the most salient of those individuals. It's parents who serve all the roles, right? They're the drivers, the chauffeurs, the nutritionists, the psychologists. They do it all. Unfortunately, the way youth sport is set up here in America, parents aren't really guided in how to fulfill those roles for their young people. Given that as a problem, we tried to fill that gap by partnering. Let's go back a couple years now, by partnering with USOPC on the development of really what amounts to a quality parenting framework. How can parents do the best job that they can in being parents? But we didn't want to target it at parents. Parents have too much to do, too much to read, too many voices in their ears. What we wanted to do is provide this document for the people that surround parents, for the people that work with parents, for those coaches, those administrators, those key community stakeholders. And what we've done is we've developed a quality parenting framework. And to this end, I organized a wonderful group of key scholars in this space from around the country and another layer around us from around the world who could oversee this process of creating a quality parenting framework. And this framework really becomes an opportunity to provide a common language, a core set of values and understandings around what it means to provide quality parenting in organized youth sports. Now, when you see the USOPC rings on this, you might think this is for parents of elite athletes. And I want to remind everybody in the audience today that this is from as we said yesterday, I'm going to steal this, from the treetops to the grassroots. It's for all the parents from the top to the bottom. Now, this document serves as really a carefully crafted opportunity for those coaches out there who want to know, how do I involve and leverage parents in what I'm doing? And I think we're going to have a very, very good panel today. I'm quite excited about it. In the spirit of examining this, we've constructed really an expert panel today, from those treetops to the grassroots, and we're going to examine not only the quality parenting framework, but what it means to work with parents in sport and how we might best leverage those individuals. So I want to bring out our panel now. You guys don't want to hear me talk, you want to hear them talk. Love to bring out our first panelist, Chris Clements. Chris is the director of coaching at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. He's served in several top coaching positions, including head coach of USA Field Hockey, men's national team, and associate head coach of the Boston College Field Hockey team. Chris, thanks for being here today. Our second panelist is Linda Flanagan. Linda's a freelance journalist and researcher. She's a former cross-country and track coach. Her writing on sports has appeared in numerous outlets, and she recently authored the book, Take Back the Game. Linda. And our third and final panelist today is Deon Moyd. Deon's a recreation manager for Parks and Rec Department in Puyallup, Washington. He serves on the state of Tacoma-Pierce County Advisory Group, which is providing guidance for Project Play as the upcoming Tacoma-Pierce County Youth Sports Report. This will be released this fall. Deon, thanks for joining us. Really an outstanding group, and honored to have been asked to lead the panel today. And we'll just jump right in. As we think about youth sport parenting, I think it's a hot button issue right now. Parents are obviously very invested in their young people's pathways and trajectories, and this has been exemplified in a number of popular and academic media reports in recent years. And Linda, let's start with you maybe for a moment. You've written extensively on this. You just published a book, but you've written even more extensively on this topic, parents in particular. In your mind, what is the biggest, if I might call it a problem, what's the biggest problem with parent involvement in youth sport?
Well, I think it's about, they're mistaken about what youth sports are for and who youth sports are for. And coaches, by the way, I think often have the same issue. But, there's this belief, or kind of, it's a view held by many, I think, that youth sports are for, winning the third grade championship and advancing and then making varsity and then maybe getting recruited, when that's really not what youth sports are for. That may happen, but youth sports are actually for development, the child's development and growth, and continued involvement in sports for life. And even more important, who youth sports are for. I think there's a lot of confusion parents get so wrapped up in it that instead of being about the child, it becomes about the parent. And again, coaches suffer from the same issue, but it's a knotty problem, but I think that's the core of it.
Naughty with a K-N or?
With a K-N.
Right. Deon, does this vibe with what you're seeing on the ground?
Yeah, so it's kind of like an allyship between the parents and coaches. The problem with parents is they have an issue with not feeling like the coaches are real qualified. So that caused a big headache for a lot of league administrators. And then on the parent side, they have a problem with the coaches because they feel that when they say the coaches aren't qualified, but then also the communication part comes back with that. Now, as far as with parents, when we say qualified, that just comes back to, for us, as far as the league administrators, just trying to find the tools to be able to educate our coaches and get them more qualified, so that will eliminate some of that problem.
What's the biggest complaint you hear from parents when you're working with young people in your community? You obviously have parents in your ear or in your email inbox probably today. What are you hearing from them?
That's the part. Hey, we have a coach that our coach isn't qualified. And so that's the big complaint. And I have a golden rule that I talk to our parents about that. Hey, if your coach, you feel he's not qualified, here's a good solution. Why don't you volunteer to be assistant coach and help them out? Because that coach is volunteering their time, taking time away from their family to invest in your child. So instead of being an adversary, how about you become an ally with them? So.
Yeah, that's great. And your role is sort of one of middle management in that you're not just getting it from the parents, but you're also then hearing from the coaches. What's their biggest complaint about maybe the parents?
With the coaches, their biggest one is a lot comes from the league administrator because they don't feel like they're really qualified to coach because we didn't give them the tools to do it because, in recreation sports, all the coaches are volunteers. So a lot of time it's just a parent. And so they have to step up and they just don't feel like they're qualified because we haven't given them the tools. And that's just something that, as far as league administrators, that we have to do a better job of trying to figure out.
Chris, as we turn to you, I think oftentimes coaches, maybe especially at the elite level, but really at all levels, coaches tend to kind of build that wall. They put up that roadblock to parents and they say, hey, look, my life is going to be a lot easier if you just stay out of your children's sport involvement. How might we actually flip that script and leverage what parents do bring to the table to create a better environment for the athletes, of course, but also for families, for communities, for teams?
Yeah, I think you're dead right, and I mean certainly some of the habits or tendencies that the coaches have is to put the arm out and try and put them at arm's length, and personally and through observation, that's not ideal. So getting to that point of connecting with the parents, being willing to, and figuring out the right ways to do that from their position, that's more fruitful in the long run, so that the whole system that's around the athletes, because everyone's showing up and providing it, whether it's the administrators, the parents, the siblings, the coaches, is for the best experience. So if we get that whole group operating more efficiently and effectively around that, and really that starts with the coach as to how those interactions initially start to get the parent more on board than an adversary.
You're speaking my language as a systems researcher. I mean, it's great when the folks in charge understand that, athletes don't come to us without all of these things happening in their lives. I think this becomes especially true at the level of athletes that you work with. Elite athletes who might have partners or spouses at home, they might have kids at home, they might have jobs for some of them, in the down years. Thinking about that entire system, I think, can be really, really impactful. And for the young athletes, right, they do have the siblings. They're in some cases following their siblings. In some cases, they're trying to find their own pathway. They have parents in their ear on the car ride home and at the dinner table. So understanding the wholeness of that, I think, can be very powerful. Just want to remind the audience here as we take a break for a moment that the Q&A is live on the app, so feel free to visit the app for this session and throw your questions in there. We'll do our best to get to as many as we can at the end of our time together today. As we think about developing some potential solutions, we've talked a little bit here in this first block around problems. Let's talk a little about developing solutions, and I want to start again with Linda. You've talked often about, and Deon actually touched on this a little bit, this kind of parent-coach disconnect, right? We know from research that coaches oftentimes find parents to be the biggest problem, but the flip side of that, and the interesting juxtaposition here, is that it's parents who trust coaches more than any other entity. This was in the State of Play report this year. Parents trust coaches more than any other entity to help their children grow and learn and develop as athletes and as people. How do we reconcile that?
Well, I don't know how you reconcile that, but I think there's always going to be conflict. I think, it's helpful if you're a coach or at any level, but especially slightly higher, like say high school and up, if you just understand that there probably will be conflict and you do everything you can to mitigate it. I think the first is to develop a genuine relationship with the child. Parents care about their kids. And if you, as the coach, care about the child and not just about the best kid or, the captain or whoever, but that you take an interest in each child's development, that's not gonna prevent all conflict. The parents still might be unhappy if, they get bumped from shortstop to right field. But if the child is clear, if you're clear with the child that you care about them and their development, that's gonna get back to home. So that's the first thing. The second is to your point, Chris, a little bit, it's about having some empathy for the parents too, that they don't want to be, most likely, or don't want to be angry and upset, and it might have to do with something way beyond the sports scene. So if you can step in their shoes for a minute and understand that it's not ideal for them if they've just invested $50,000 and now their kid's on JV and as a junior in high school. But the third and the most effective preventive tool, I think, is communication. You just cannot communicate too much as a coach, and I think, or as a league. And I think, I often say when I started coaching, I think my first meeting, I came out with like a note card that had like, here's who I am, here's what I did, here's what I'll do, like something very basic. And by the time I finished coaching, I gave every child to bring home to their parents a handbook with like, here's the purpose, here's the policy on cell phones, here's the policy on captains, here's the policy on cuts, here's a contract, here's what, it just went on. And it was to address the typical issues that come up. It's not going to prevent everything, but if you're clear from the start, communication is the best way to avoid conflict.
I love what you said about empathy. I think it's a great starting point to understand that we all have various roles. We need to know our roles. We need to fulfill those to the extent that we can. Coaches understanding parents is something that I think is lost. We ask parents a lot of times to understand the coaching role, but we don't ask coaches very often to understand parents. And I think this document that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, I think will help them do that, hopefully. It's hard. Many of us in the audience, many of us on stage are sport parents in addition to our professional roles, and it's awfully difficult. I catch myself, I know the research, I write a lot of the research, and I catch myself getting emotional when I see my kids out there as well. So that empathy is a great starting point. And your point about communication should be well taken by everybody. We assume a lot.
Yes, and there's a lot of opportunities to make mistakes as a coach. There's so many details, and things do go wrong. The weather doesn't cooperate, the bus doesn't cooperate. But if you're really forward with your communication, that helps a ton.
Yeah, and I think starting with that as the correct tone, Chris talked a little bit about the building walls, the putting the arm, keeping at arm's length, and I think that communication allows for that free passage of knowledge. And there's a right time and a right place, of course, and it's not after a loss, within 5 minutes of the loss, right? But Chris, as we transition to the quality parenting framework that is being released today in conjunction with Project Play Summit, in 2017, USOPC came out with the quality coaching framework. Why was now the right time to create this sister document and arm our stakeholders with one more piece of information to help create a better system?
Sure. I think as the research, we needed to come up to speed with the research around coaching and where we were at the time for creating the quality coaching framework. And as society as well has changed so much, I think thank you for all the amazing work you've done in this space for what is needed now within this messaging, because we have from the treetops to the grass level connection through our family, which is our NGBs, So the more things that we can put in around to support that system, that's critical. So the coaching framework's one, and this is the second step for us, is a sibling document, you could call it, that helps with a critical piece of sport.
Great. As a follow-up, I think when we see the ring, I use this in my intro, but when we see the Olympic rings on something, immediately it goes to, that's for the top 1% of 1%. How do you see this document actually going from the treetops to the grassroots? How might it inform Little League coaches out there, youth hockey coaches out there, coaches who are volunteer parents and don't know anything they're doing? How might this help everybody in our ecosystem of sport?
Yeah, I think regardless of whether the rings are on it or not, the framework itself is so useful and usable at any level. So for us, it's about now creating some networks out into every level of sport so that people can utilize this document and give us feedback and thoughts around where that sits and what could be useful for how it's implemented in your space, because it is written for every parent, right, in every shape and form, and everyone that's involved with working with parents in the sports environment.
And it's one of the things that Wade Gilbert talked about as the lead author of the quality coaching framework. We're not out to prescribe best practices necessarily, but it's about the best principles. What kind of principles can we offer? Tools, tips, strategies for those that are on the ground working with parents in an everyday capacity. So really
exactly.
excited to see where it lands.
Yeah.
Deon, in your role, what kind of strategies have you used to facilitate high quality parent involvement?
I have partnered with organizations called National Alliance for Youth Sports. About 15 years ago, I went through a program and I became a certified youth sports administrator. And what they do is they do a lot of training on equipping coaches and then training up parents. And so just through, going through a few of the courses, we as a city decided to adopt a way to be able to educate and train our parents. Well, in Florida, where National Alliance for Youth Sports is based, they say all their parents have to be trained before they can join their league. That couldn't work with us in Puyallup, so I had to think of a creative way. And so what I did is I just certified one parent from each team. And then what happened is their job to take the information back to the parents for the rest of the parents on their team and educate them. And then next year, I said, hey, if you already went through it, you couldn't go through it again. So then we just got more parents certified that way. And then through all this, they came up with a unique plan of sort. They call it Silent Saturday. And when I first said, hey, I'm going to implement this program, there were some people that were not very happy. And what Silent Saturday is we, as parents, we entrust the coach to coach the kids, our kids. And so what Silent Saturday is, it's for one Saturday, for just that Saturday, is the kids get to play, the coaches got to coach in a positive manner, and the parents have to stay silent. The only acknowledgement they can give is they can clap, they can hold up signs. And so we did it for 1 year, and then get some feedback we just went out and interviewed some kids randomly and said, hey, what do you think of Silent Saturday? And the first thing they came back was, we love it. And the reason that the kids love it was for that one day, the only voice they heard was from the coach. Then they had to hear about from the parent and the coach, so now they're looking, hey, who's yelling at me? It was just coach. The coach kind of really didn't like it because they was like, man, they hear me yelling all the time. But we end up implementing it to 2 Saturdays in the year. So now we do 2 Silent Saturdays every year. It's an 8-week season. We do 2. And I would tell you, we sent out a memo to the parents that, hey, this isn't about trying to punish a parent. This is about trying to enable the kids and embolden the kids, and that's what it's all about. And so it's been very successful. Parents are coming up to me asking, hey, can we do it every Saturday? But, I know that's not going to work.
It's super powerful. And, I see anecdotally and in my research at times, you see a kid go up for a layup and misses, and the first look is right up to mom or dad in the stands. And as parents, we are sources of competence information to our kids, but we have to be very careful that our kids aren't always looking to us, right? They have a coach that fulfills that role. And if we find that happening, we probably need to take a step back. We probably need to kind of look in the mirror and say, why is it that my son or daughter is looking to me first? It's okay to look to me, but maybe not first every time when they're having success and failure. So I love the idea of it. I wonder whether it might extend to the van ride home or around the dinner table as well, but that's a different conversation. I want to remind everybody again that here in about 10 or 12 minutes, we'll be taking some Q&A from the audience. So get those in on the app, and our wonderful John Solomon will make sure we get those here on the screen to answer some of your questions. As we think towards understanding kind of next steps, I want to start with you this time, Chris, and look back, circle back towards the brand new released Quality Parenting Framework. How do you see this being deployed? I mean, I know this is a virgin document. We're not quite sure yet where we're going with it in terms of complementary pieces, but in your mind's eye, how might it be deployed from the grassroots to the treetops to ensure that we're giving the best potential experience for the kids at all levels?
Yeah, for sure. I think for us, really, it shouldn't just sit on our website and people can come and read it. I think to your point of what are useful resources for people that are in the field, working live with the parents, and at any level to be able to have the resources that they need, to be able to have the conversations they need, to come up with the ideas and the strategies about the Silent Saturdays, to give the ideas for the car ride home, to be implemented. So for us, yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's live as of only an hour or two ago, right? So we're very excited, first and foremost, to get it launched, but are very open to hearing what would be useful for how this can really come to life and be implemented versus looking back at this in a few years' time and just it's still sort of sitting there. So very, very keen to hear thoughts.
Yeah, very much not a static document in our mind, at least, as collaboration on this goes. So if you have ideas, if you have thoughts about what might be some useful toolkits on the ground in your work as stakeholders, please come see Chris, please come see me, put a bug in our ear. We'll be developing these products over the course of the next year and deploying things as we go. So we're very excited about this document being launched today and moving forward. Deon, let me pose that same question to you though now. In your role, you represent many of the stakeholders here in the audience. What would be useful to you as someone who's got boots on the ground every day with kids, with parents, with coaches? What kind of products, what kind of deliverables would you like to see that would make your life easier?
I think the quality parenting framework is just like an added tool to go along with some of the coaching trainings and the parent certifications that we have in place. I know that, like partnering with, technology savvy people with the apps and everything, because I know like the Positive Coaches Alliance partners with Mojo on stuff. It'd be great to be able to get that quality parenting framework, aligned with maybe Mojo or some app to wherever you can be able to get that in people's hands a little bit quicker, and they can be able to have it, digitally.
I'll take bids in the lobby after the panel today. I think it's a great point in terms of things that we could put in your hands, in your coach's hands, in your parents' hands even. You think about like infographics or little videos that could stream to them. How might we best reach people, these key stakeholders, where they are?
Like I say, that one is, with those kind of apps, not just parenting apps, but as far as coaching apps, we have found out we'll just use as Mojo as, I'm not, I don't work for Mojo, so I'm sorry if I'm giving props, but it's one of those ones where I think it's helped with that communication part as far as Ms. Linda had talked about earlier about the communication is that when you have Mojo, you can just go ahead and put your whole game schedule on that app and be able to get the information out. If you need to, change practice, you're able to just go to the app. The same thing with as far as the parenting and framework part. If you was able to put it on there and just say, hey, parents, here's a couple snippets to be able to go and look at, I think it saves time and it'd be easier to do.
Linda, you've urged parents to in your words, take back the game. That's my second shameless plug for you, buddy.
I appreciate it.
What would that look like? What does taking back the game look like if we could reconstitute the youth sports system in the United States? Where would we start?
Well, I think we would start by invigorating local sports, community-based sports, put more money and resources into that, fund parks reasonably. I mean, I've read recently that across the nation, they get less than 2% of local budgets goes to parks. If we could move away from the separating of kids from, as Tom Ferry says, separate the weak from the strong, so that everyone can play, so that people can grow into their bodies and continue to love it. When you think about what Edwin Moses said today, how he was, short and skinny, and he was able to keep playing, and in today's system, maybe he would have just quit. And I think we're losing so many kids before they should, we want them to continue playing throughout life, and that if the system is built around participation and enjoyment rather than, again, winning the third grade championship, I think that would go a long way. Also invigorating high school sports so that they can offer more athletics than simply the varsity and, the top players, that there's activities integrated into schools with recess, with PE. It destigmatized PE. Everybody hates PE. If we could find a way to make that interesting and fun, it would be a move away from the professionalization of youth sports and back to what they're supposed to be for, which is for movement and pleasure.
I only disagree with one thing you said, and that is everybody hates PE. It was my favorite subject.
Mine too, but
My second was lunch.
Then recess.
There you go. As we leave the stakeholders here in the audience with some things to chew on as they go back to their places of work and residence, let's maybe work our way from closest to furthest and start with you, Chris. Where do we go from here? We've launched a huge document. We've put some resources out there. We're going to continue to build that here over the next year or so. What can these folks take away and take back to their communities that would make their communities and the youth sports system, the subsystems in their communities better?
Yeah, I think really it's just about encouraging and celebrating that connection and what the parents offer. I just think from a coach's perspective, they're not aware of what that could be like because of typically what they see and hear is that the parents cause more problems than good, so it's easier for me to deal with them by keeping them at arm's length. So when we have had coaches, in my experience, engage the parents in really meaningful ways, they've been actually shocked with what that's actually meant for them. It's made life a lot easier, they're way less stressed about it, the parents are on board, the word's getting out about what's actually going on. So if we can encourage and celebrate that and work with the coaches and help them, because it is difficult to have those conversations, but really that would be my main takeaway.
Yeah, and I've found that oftentimes your greatest antagonist can become your greatest source of strength when you bring them into the fold, right? So I think that's a great strategy. I love that. Linda, how about for you? What can our folks take home?
I think you're referring to keep your enemies closer,
There you
right?
go.
I don't know how this applies exactly, but I think one of the most important, what I would love parents to appreciate, or that I think would, if they could embrace it, would go a long way towards improving youth sports, is to put it bluntly, get their own lives, to develop their own interests, maybe to go play sports on their own, like, go play beach volleyball or go for a run, and to move away a little bit from their children's activities. I think it would be better for kids. In fact, I recommend in my book that parents miss some games, because kids know if you're an attentive sports parent, they know that you care. So if you miss some games, it's like a reminder to the child that the game is for them. Remember, that's the first thing. The youth sports are not for the adults. And also that you cultivate your own interests so that you're not so fixated on the child's performance and what that does for you as on that social pecking order.
One of the greatest things I saw, my little guy, 6-year-old Bridger, his soccer coach last spring had the parents on a separate field during the kids' practice, had the parents over there kicking some balls around, doing some drills.
That's great.
And at the end, they brought the parents together and we got to scrimmage the kids.
That's
And it
fun.
was a lot of fun because it kind of brought us into their world for a minute. It allowed us to go have fun but be separate from what they were doing and not sort of overbearing and helicopter hovering. But it allowed it to remain a family thing, which I preached about yesterday, but at the same time doing exactly what you said. It let the kids have their moment. And then at the end, we got to have a little family fun together for 5 minutes,
That's
which
a
was
great
great.
idea.
So, love that. Deon, same question to you. What can our folks take home with them as they go back to their communities and work with their local parks and rec?
I'll keep it short and sweet. It's something that we talked about when we were prepping, and it stuck with me, and that's building an allyship between coaches and parents and not having an adversary relationship between the coaches and parents. And that's what I would probably send you away with, is just really focus on them being partners and not adversaries.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. We got about 9 or 10 minutes left. I'd love to get to a few of these questions for our panel. From Brandon, one-on-one, parents really seem to get it. Development, fun, and all the good of sports. But then in a group, their perspective changes. Any suggestions on how to get parents as a group to have the same core values as why kids are playing? This is great. I'll touch on this for a second because I do surveys with parents all the time as a researcher, and they tell me all the wonderful things about sports, and that's why their kids play, the teamwork, the life lessons, the respecting authority. But then you see them on the sidelines, and it's like they've turned into a crazy animal. So this question really gets at the core of that process. And maybe let's start with Deon. I know you're sort of on the ground there most, maybe with parents of young athletes. Why is it different for parents in one-on-one settings, and then when you see them as a cluster of a herd of parents on the sideline?
I think it's, the big lights as far as, NBA championships, that kind of stuff there, and they just get competitive. And so they don't know how to relate that, hey, it's about the kids and not about them. And so I just think they just get so wrapped up in the outcome instead of the successes of how to prepare and how they got there.
Yeah, I love that answer, and I'll only add that I think we as parents, oftentimes our identity can be a little bit wrapped up in, is my kid the best on the team? That serves my identity, absolutely does. I'm their parent. I made them. And then if your kid's maybe struggling or not getting the playing time that you think they deserve, you can feel like that reflects on you as a parent. So I think, when you put yourself in that social setting, because it is a social setting, there is a hierarchy. Let's not kid ourselves on the sidelines. That can be tough to wrestle with for some parents. Yeah, great. A second question we have. The USOPC led all NGBs in an effort to introduce ADM, the American Developmental Model, to coaches within the Olympic sport community. What efforts will be made to help coaches and sport administrators to communicate the principles of the American Developmental Model now to parents? Let's have you take that one, Chris.
For sure, yeah, no one else. No, well, I think within the document we reference the ADM principles as well, so that's one piece. But I think for us also, in and around the same time right now, we're developing some more resources that is beyond what ultimately the infographic currently is and what hockey has developed, to be able to provide some more guidance and opportunities for connection to the why of the ADM, right? Like why it's good to be a quality sports parent. So ultimately we're working on that right now to be able to produce some more tools and resources that will help our NGBs reach out to those coaches and reach out to those parents to create more informed parents around what it is we're trying to do from not only this, but also from why development model is important.
And I think that's such a wonderful take-home in and of itself, the why question. Oftentimes we tell parents what, but we don't give them that why. So I think in the spirit of kind of bringing them into the circle, bringing them on board, keeping our enemies closer, as Linda said, that why can be so impactful and so important. What are some of the strategies to partner with parents who don't believe sports are important? This is a great question. And want their kids to work to put food on the table or stay home to watch their younger siblings while they're at work? It's really interesting. It kind of gets at the valuation of sport, which I talked a little bit about yesterday. Linda, maybe you want to take this one.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Well, I also think that sports are so dominant in our culture that I think most kids feel some pressure to participate to begin with. And if the child does have to, an older teenager has to babysit, I think it's hard to make the case that they should, abandon the parent and go, play soccer. I think as part of an effort to make youth sports what they should be for, participation and enjoyment, to build a lifelong habit, maybe that should be part of the education in schools and places. This is why we do this, and in the leagues, it's for your development, it's for your overall growth as a person. It's not about being on the team because everybody else is, but it's for your real personal development. I just feel like kids, though, already feel a lot of pressure to be on teams, and if I would advise that parent to step away and just continue to ask the child, try to expose the child to as many different sports as possible. Maybe they're not meant to play basketball or lacrosse or soccer or whatever, and to just let, in the spirit of the Aspen 8 plays, ask the child what they want.
Love that. We've got time for a couple more here. Let's try and get through 2. Active kids are healthier physically and mentally. Access and cost are big barriers to sports, though. Youth sports is a sleeping giant. How can parents be mobilized to press Congress for youth sports infrastructure investments and to help with youth sport costs? I mean, I see Deon. Deon, I'm gonna give this one to you, man. You're over there just shaking your head right away. I mean, go for it.
Let's look at that one again. I'm a loss of words for that one, man.
So if we assume sports are good, if we assume that our kids want to and should be playing sports, but the infrastructure access maybe isn't there, how might we try and solve that riddle?
First one is, trying to make it affordable, make it accessible for kids, and then giving the tools to your parents and to your coaches. And once those 2 pillars are set in place, it's easy to have a kid just go out and to compete and just go play, because at the end of the day, they just want to go and get exercise, be part of a team, and just have fun. And that's the big key there.
Get exercise, be part of a team, have fun. I love that. Okay, one last question. How can we stimulate non-organized play? So let's kind of remove ourselves from organized sport here for a sec. How can we stimulate non-organized play in such a way as to boost activity without relying on parents and coaches? Why did it disappear over the years? Linda, you've written on this a little bit.
Yes, I have.
You want to take this?
Well, it's disappeared for a variety of reasons. One, because we no longer fund parks and public facilities the way we used to. Also, because private industry has swept in and offered alternatives, so the government can continue to not fund it. And the stakes are a lot higher for parents. The size of the family has shrunk, so children are more precious, and they need to be cultivated. So, it's the fixation on organized sports has been evolving over a few decades. That's, I think, why it happened. What to do about it is, I think it has to become the ground up. If every other child is out there playing some team sport and you're like, no, we're going to do unstructured play, and there's no one to play with, I think it's going to require parents to, work with others to kind of say, let's go to the park and we'll make an agreement, and we're not going to do, travel, ice hockey in 2nd grade or whatever the travel. They start so young that we're going to withhold our family and just go to the park together. There's also an app called Pickup Sports that was started in Georgia by Neera Jayanthi. And it's an app that, I don't know how widespread it is, but that allows kids to, by using an app, meet at a park or a playground and just have one adult sort of supervising. So it's just like an adult presence, but not calling the shots or setting up the bases or refereeing. It's about unstructured play. And I think that kind of initiative is what we're going to see more of, and we ought to really celebrate, because that's what parents want, and it's so great for kids.
Yeah, perfect. Go ahead, Deon.
Can I add one thing to that? I think that in this day and age, when I was growing up, my parents said, hey, go outside, we'll see you back at dinner time. Well, now, with safety-wise, I don't think parents feel comfortable to be able to let their kids go 2 blocks away to a park and be able to go play. And so I think that's where a lot of that that free play has disappeared because just parents just don't feel safe to be able to let their kids go. Where, like I said, when I was growing up, we used to do it and just come home.
Yeah, that's a great point, Deon. Thanks for adding. Chris, we saw the QR code up earlier. For the folks in the audience that might have missed that, where can they go to, there it is, you're on it, I love it.
Thank you.
Where can we go to find the quality parenting framework, and how can our folks in the audience utilize it in their own ways?
Sure, I think ultimately just go visit it. It's on the Team USA website in our coaching department area, and I think from there just have a good read, and then just sort of process it. I think you'll see that it's a very user-friendly read, and there's lots of tips and ideas in there, questions to ask, etc. So I think from there, that point forwards, I think we'll be keen to sort of hear roughly how that lands with you and what you're seeing, and then just suggesting or passing it along. I mean, there's no reason it should just sit there and you can't pass it along. It's free access. Get it out there, share it with as many people as you possibly can. That would be very helpful for us right now with where we're at.
Yeah, and please do reach out either to Chris and his team or to me and my team with those ideas for how we might best create products for on-the-ground use. That'd be great. We've got 30 seconds left. Now it's down to 28, so I'm going to stop talking. One-word answer, word association game. I'm surprising these guys with this. They didn't know it was coming.
Gosh.
Parents can be
Helpful.
Partners.
Partners.
Allies, there you go.
Allies. I love it, guys. Right on time. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you to our panel. Really appreciate y'all being here. As you exit, don't forget we've got the box lunches outside. You'll have a little break before the next session, and thank you very much for your engagement. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Oh.